When it comes to creativity, people tend to think that it can only bloom in an atmosphere of complete freedom, of total liberty. And they think of constraints and limitations to be an obstacle to generate new ideas. Well, often it is the opposite. Constraints, limitations often stimulate the process of creativity and stimulate getting new and original ideas. And that's what I want to convince people about today. Creativity and constraints. When the box is the limit, there's always a way out. So why is it that constraints stimulate creativity? Constraints stimulate creativity because they force us to think in alternatives. For 2 years, I did not ride a blue girls bike. 2 years, I rode this fucking Harley Davidson in my mind. For instance, when you pose a question to a rational thinker, he will try to get you an answer as quick as possible. And this answer is already on the tip of his tongue, and he's satisfied with it. When you pose the same question to a creative thinker, he starts thinking in alternatives. He possibly also knows this tip of the tongue answer, but it will not satisfy him. He thinks in alternatives, picks out the best alternative out of it, and this will be his creative answer. Now, when you have a constraint, when you have an obstacle, you are obliged to think in alternatives because the straightforward answer does not fit the question anymore. Well, very often it's also a very comfortable situation to have constraints because, first of all, a constraint can be a starting point. Secondly, it offers you a framework, the areas you can move in with your ideas. And thirdly, it can also be, for very creative people, it can also be a challenge. And once they conquer this challenge, it gives you a feeling of satisfaction. Radical constraints lead to radical innovation. I developed 5 unique techniques. And the first technique is called the tree of trade. It's what I call the find and replace technique. It's really based on thinking in alternatives. When you think about a certain subject, it contains some essential elements. And you make a list of these essential elements and you take out these elements one by one and you try to replace them by alternatives.
The tree of trade, which is best explained by an example. If you were to innovate a library, say, then the first thing you do is list your missing essentials. So, for example, books, chairs, tables.
Second technique is called the frugalizer, and it's based on frugal innovation, which is making products and services available for a large audience with limited resources. I detected 12 mechanisms in this frugal innovation, and based on these 12 mechanisms, you come up with new and fresh ideas. The third technique is called the casual constraint contest, and it's a game that you play with your team. You have a stack of cards, about 100 cards, and on each card is a what-if question. What if this or that? And you have a certain challenge, but you have to take into account this what-if scenario, and you have to come up with as many good ideas as possible. So the team that comes up with the most ideas wins the game.
So our solution was to surprise our audience with new ways to understand and learn about the daily news.
The fourth technique is based on the fact that it always seems easier to find solutions for other people's problems than for our own. And the reason for that is that when we have a problem, we are often blinded, we're often blocked by the obstacle, and we don't see our way out of it. So we have the propeller, this is the cool technique. The propeller lifts you up. It's like you're in a maze and you can't find the exit, and by lifting you up you will see the exits and you will find your way out. That's what the propeller does. And at the same time, the propeller also forces you to go deeper into your problem by asking the why question several times after each other.
We will implement super highly designed mobile containers, and those containers will serve as buffer space for hospitals.
Fifth and the last technique is called the river. It's a metaphorical approach to the problem. Imagine that you're running through the woods from point A to point B, and all of a sudden a wild and large river crosses your path. And you want to reach your destination, point B. So what are you going to do? You can swim the river, you can bypass the river, you can bridge the river, you can fish the river. All options that are metaphors for solving problems.
We decided to take advantage of our constraint by creating a brand new concept. we decided to organize a virtual reality festival, guys. That's the solution of festival in your own reality.
Well, my last piece of advice is a sentence that I often use. When you can't find a solution within the box, you probably haven't checked all the corners.